I'm going to start that over because we're going to record for prosperity. Bob Rakowski here out of Houston, Texas. First and foremost, I'm a family man. Been happily married to Kelly Rakowski 34 years. We have 3 beautiful children, 3 wonderful granddaughters. Our Organo family is now almost 24,000 strong in over 20 countries and sharing treasures all over the world so beautifully. My experience in terms of health, I've been the clinic director of the Natural Medicine Center for now, this is my 31st year of clinical practice. I've treated world champions from every major professional sport. And I've also seen the other end of the spectrum, people that were sent home to die. And so when I show this foot here, this foot was scheduled to be amputated 2 days from the day the picture was taken. But look at it 2 weeks later and ultimately 17 months later. And by the way, I've seen some video testimonials out of Africa similar. This was a diabetic foot that was failing, but we're going to find out that Ganoderma and healthy lifestyle choices can be really, really good for diabetes. And by the way, this is a picture on stage. I have taught over 10,000 hours of health seminars, functional medicine seminars to doctors all over the world. So when we get to the questions, I'm very, very comfortable with questions and answers. But one of my mentors asked a very interesting question the other day. He said, what if everybody, let's turn back our clock just a few years ago. What if everybody could say, you know what, I am vibrant health. I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm in control of my existence, my finances, my world. He said, what if everybody actually was their best self? Would we have had a pandemic? And I'm going to ask that question to you, and maybe you could type in the chat. If everybody was healthy, happy, balanced, and successful, would we have had a pandemic? And maybe that is the future of a better world, helping so many people to be healthy, happy, and vibrant. And the great news is we have tools to do that. I was at a conference, it seems like it was about 20 years ago, and they had an 8-time world champion athlete on stage. And someone asked him, how is it that you have so much energy? And I remember his answer like it was yesterday. He says, well, the only way you have energy is to earn energy. And you know what, I've taken that since then, and I've said, you know what, the only way you have health is to earn health. And so here's how we earn it. We live healthy. And I tell people, I call them the Magnificent 7. You've got to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every single day. By the way, Ganoderma can be very helpful for all of these things, and I'll share that with you. But we're going to go through each one of these factors and why it's important to really take good care of ourselves. So when it comes to eating right, this is the Global Nutrition Report. And very, very simply, I'm happy to say that there are fewer and fewer starving children, but there's an increasingly starved population. So when you look at these overweight young men, how is it that they could be starving? Well, their body is starving for nutrition. I'll show later why we don't have the nutrition in food that we once had. But what happens is people are eating, not getting the nutrition that they need, and then they stay very, very hungry because their body is craving the nutrients. And so Global Nutrition Report 2020, malnutrition is the leading cause of death. Now, we would think that we would hear, if that was the top cause of death, we'd hear about it, we'd have a plan for it, but that's not really what I see a plan for. And so how did this happen, and how did every country in the world become affected? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's simple math. It takes 30 elements to make healthy plants, animals, and humans. But scientists found out about 100 years ago that they could grow big plants with only 3 elements: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So interesting reference, the citation here, CIA.gov, Central Intelligence Agency, a government agency, basically said the rapid depletion of minerals is creating serious long-term health consequences. It's been estimated that in the last 60 years, we have depleted, about 60 inches of topsoil. And it's estimated that it takes 1,000 years to generate 1 inch of topsoil. So it's going to take a long time to replete that. I was lecturing at a nutrition conference about 20 years ago in Orlando, Florida. And Barry Sears was the keynote speaker. He had just written a book called The Zone Diet. And he talked about it being very, very important to eat the right ratio of proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. But he put a copy of the USDA food pyramid, US Department of Agriculture food pyramid, on the screen. And he said, you know what, if ever there was a terrorist-like plot designed to destroy the health of the world, this would be it. So there's plenty of people that are saying, you know what, human beings really weren't designed to eat grains. Grains raise blood sugar. They do a number of problems. And probably one of the biggest problems with our grains is so many of them are genetically modified. And, you know, with genetically modified gluten, that's exceptionally bad for people. So I often recommend avoiding grains overall. But at any rate, that's when he put up the food pyramid. So I created a life pyramid and a food pyramid. And by the way, the basis of my life pyramid is love. And I like to quote Og Mandino. You know, he had a wonderful book called The Greatest Salesman, but his final line on the dissertation on love is, most of all, I will love myself. For when I do, I will zealously inspect all things that I allow to enter my mind, my heart, my soul, and my body. So this is the food and nutrition pyramid. At the base of the pyramid, nature's foods. If God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. Very, very simple rule. Then we go to superfoods. And Ganoderma lucidum, very, very fortunately, the world top consensus superfood. Then we go at functional foods, and believe it or not, the OGX is a functional food. It's a food with a proven health benefit, fat loss, anti-inflammatory, alkalizing, wonderful benefits there. A good multivitamin, multi-mineral, omega-3s, probiotics, D3, K2. And when I create nutrition programs, whether it's for elite athletes or people fighting for their lives, I make sure that we cover all of these levels, but different amounts for different people with different needs and different goals. So Jack LaLanne said, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. Michael Pollan said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. By the way, Lucretius said, one man's food's another man's poison. And Hippocrates said, let your food be your medicine. In order to do that, I combine myself, personal, over 40 years of research in clinical nutrition to tell people these are rock solid, science-based diet guidelines. Eat real food, not fake food, not artificial food, not heavily processed food, clean food, not genetically modified, not sprayed with herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. Not too much. Why not too much? Because too much creates obesity, too much shortens your life. Calorie restriction is the #1 mechanism of longevity ever studied. Not too often. There's over 100,000 medical studies on intermittent fasting. And we know that we should have a longer fasting window than food window over the course of the day. And for most people, you should spend about 16 hours of your day fasting. Every color, because every color has different nutrients every day, because that's how often we should nourish ourselves. And then finally, in a way that honors your genetics, your physiology, and your body goals, mostly plants. So even though I took each point and broke it down, I'll read it through it one more time about how you should eat real food, clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day, in a way that honors your genetics, your physiology, your body goals, mostly plants. If you follow those guidelines, your food can be your medicine. There's a nice OGX shake picture and a stage presentation of an Organo event, but I especially appreciate Frank, who lost 100 pounds in 10 months by just switching to these delicious shakes and being so satisfied because his body was finally nourished. And we have great stories all over the world of people melting off the pounds. When it comes to drinking right, I think most people realize that our earth is 2/3 water. You may also realize that our body is 2/3 water. And by the way, 2/3 of that water should be inside of our cells. You know, one of my great nutritional mentors said years ago that you should drink your food and actually eat your drink. Well, what does he mean by that? You should chew it often enough to liquefy it so you have better absorption, eat less. And what about eating your drink? Well, keep it in your mouth long enough to prepare your body for the good nutrients that are coming, especially if it's, you know, organo coffee or even some type of really healthy fruit or vegetable type juice. I have done over 10,000 body composition and fluid distribution assessments on patients over the course of my 30 years. It's a process called bioelectrical impedance analysis. And I borrowed this title from a TED Talk. Dr. Daniel Amen was an expert in brain scans. And the title of his TED Talk was, "What Did I Learn from 83,000 Brain Scans?" And what he learned is that we can change our brain. And that's a very good thing to know. But what did I learn from 10,000 body composition and hydration tests? I learned that most people are dehydrated. And when I talk about most, I'm not talking 51%. I'm talking about in the 90th percentile. Now, how are they dehydrated? I'll show that in the next slide. But here's a fact. When the sperm and the egg meet, you're nearly 100% water. Then a newborn infant, 80% water. Then as time goes on, with each passing decade, we get less and less water. So I tell people we start out in life like a plum, and if we live long enough, we'll ultimately get to be more like a prune. So cells have water in them, and cells are surrounded by water. And this is a picture from a very old biochemistry text, but it was the best picture I found that explains what I want to talk about. Water can actually go into the cell, but it has to follow particles into cells. So as a general rule, nutrients are what are inside of the cell. So the better the nutrient status, the more water is inside the cell. And water can follow particles outside of the cell, and toxins are generally outside of the cell. So when we have good nutrient status, low levels of toxicity in the body, then we have good fluid status and good fluid ratios. And when we start talking about coffee and tea, Organo, or whether you're talking the CXT or the shakes, these are ways where we nourish the body, support putting ideal levels of water inside the cell, and we detoxify. So we get rid of that bloat, that swelling feeling around the cells. When it comes to thinking right, I tell people that the brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, and toxin vulnerable system in the body. A few 100,000 published medical studies support those facts. And since I'm a show me kind of person, I literally did screenshots of these different searches in PubMed.gov. So this is National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health database. And we can see that there are lots of studies on nutrition in the brain, toxins in the brain, stress in the brain. And by the way, mitochondria make 94.4% of human energy. So that's why I typed in specifically mitochondria in the brain. Now we get back to our favorite superfood, Ganoderma. Many dozens of studies on Ganoderma in the brain. But here's the summary. It's really good for serotonin, which is happiness, GABA, which is calmness, acetylcholine, which is memory, and dopamine has different functions depending upon different sections of the brain. In the frontal cortex, it's for focus. In a section of the brain called the locus coeruleus, it's going to be for extreme joy. And then there's a section called the substantia nigra, which is fine motor control. Ganoderma can induce brain cell stem cells and even brain regeneration. That's powerful for people that may have had a brain trauma or some type of neurodegenerative condition. It's known to help prevent Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and can even be anti-seizure. So a very safe and effective and powerful brain food. So there's Daniel Amen, what he learned from his 83,000 brain scans. You can change people's brains. And he wrote this book, The End of Mental Illness. And, you know, he asked this question, what if mental health and brain health are one and the same? Well, I can tell you they're very tightly related. So when we create a healthier brain, we likely create a healthier brain chemistry and mentality. And with their very sophisticated scans, they were able to do a scan in a person in a grateful state and then a person in a hateful state. And here's what we can tell you. Gratitude is good for the brain, hate, destructive. When we look at the brain, it has the highest amount of blood flow per mass of body at rest. It gets 20% of the body's oxygen. And under stress in a fight or flight mode, blood is reduced to the brain. The higher level thought processes are shut down. The joy centers are shut down. And people function on reflex activity. In extreme stressful circumstance, people have a hard time thinking straight. This is a citation from the medical literature. And what it says is that nearly everybody walking around has elevated stress chemicals in their body to the point where they actually begin to ignore the stress chemicals and the benefits that they bring, because every chemical in our body has a purpose. Cortisol is an anti-inflammatory, and that's necessary if the body's in fight or flight mode. But if you're always in that fight or flight mode, you lose that benefit of cortisol. So this is one of my most popular clinical interventions over the last 15 years. And I tell people, people are under so much stress. If we can just put the brakes on the stress in their body, mind, and spirit, sometimes that can be life-changing for people. And here's what I recommend. Melatonin every waking hour, 1 to 2 milligrams. In most countries, you can get that. In some countries, it's prescription. Theanine every waking hour. If you're not familiar with theanine, theanine is very calming to the brain without producing sleepiness. And theanine is in our CXT. And it's derived from green tea. And by the way, green tea is also in our CXT. And then Ganoderma, my preference is the spores. And I like these things every waking hour because bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. This can be life enhancing for so many people. When we start looking at brain health before the age of 55, people's top fear is cancer. After the age of 55, it's actually Alzheimer's. And I might ask this question: if people were perfectly healthy and balanced and in charge of their life, would they have as much fear of cancer or Alzheimer's? And I would suggest no, because we know that our genes are a minor player in both of these conditions, maybe 5 to at most 10%, but our lifestyle choices 90 to 95%. So Organo, realizing the need, has created their Cognition vertical. I absolutely love the NeuroTracker. I think the CXT is the best product. NeuroTracker has been around for over 20 years, over 50 published medical studies. Their catchphrase is a better brain in 90 minutes, and those 90 minutes are 15 6-minute sessions. And with Organo, it's a much better brain, on the average 130% better over those 90 minutes. This year, I've committed to doing 500 sessions of NeuroTracker, and I'm on pace. I think I've got 144 in already. And I can tell you my brain is measurably better, and my life is measurably better. There's no such thing as multitasking. There's task switching. Women are much better at that than men. And I was the kind of person I had to be 100% focused on what I was doing and it couldn't be distracted. Well, now I task switch so much faster. That's part of what is trained with the Cognition. I have plenty of colleagues that take it, patients that take it, Organo team members that take it. One of my favorite testimonials is I have a 75-year-old woman who was worried about her cognition. She was losing her keys, forgetting things. Started doing NeuroTracker. She noticed that got better fast. But she said, Dr. Bob, my physical balance is much, much better. And if you make your brain better, gosh, your whole life and your whole body should improve. So if you haven't tried NeuroTracker, they actually have a free little sample that you can try. I would suggest trying it. Previously, when it was available in medical clinics, $100 per session. The US cost is $300 per year, unlimited. So one phenomenal bargain. Getting to Ganoderma in the brain, this was a study on concussion. It was done on rats. And what I tell you is that I'm not in favor of injuring any animal, even for medical experimentation. But what they would do is that they would give rats a controlled concussion. One group got no nutrition support. The other group got Ganoderma and support nutrients. Then at 21 days, they actually sacrificed the animals and dissected the brains. And that was the difference in the amount of amyloid plaque. And so we know that Ganoderma helps to dissolve this plaque, which is associated with Alzheimer's. I like to tell this story. This woman's name is Donna May. And by the way, she's not with us anymore, but After I had had this wonderful case with this foot, I was giving a organo lecture, a health lecture. And I showed that foot on the board, and the person in the room said, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I have a friend whose mother has already lost one leg due to diabetes, and she has a wound on her other foot that's not healing. The doctors are suggesting they may have to remove that." And they asked, will Ganoderma help? Well, I answer it the same every time. I don't know if it'll help, but it sure won't hurt. Well, Donna Mae was in assisted living. They gave her red tea and some spore capsules. And amazingly, the wound on her foot healed very, very fast. But she also started getting her memory back fast. At 3 months, the doctor said her dementia was in complete remission. Up to that point, for 2 years, she didn't even know her children's name. And her diabetes was also in remission. So her family got 2 extra years and quality years with her. I asked people, what would it be worth to get someone an extra day with their mother, let alone a few years? When it comes to moving right, we know that life is motion. So if we move better, we live better. And can we get fit fast? And the answer is yes. And so the Wingate cycle test is a test that they used to do with athletes to assess anaerobic power. And this was a reporter where she said, you know what, that actually looks like by itself could be a heck of a workout. What if I did only this for a month? What if I warmed up for 30 seconds, for 2 minutes, and then went all out for 30 seconds, just pedaled as hard as I could and tried to get a little better every day. I wonder what would happen. Well, 30 days, improved cardiovascular fitness, improved anaerobic fitness, improved body composition, improved strength across the board, really, really good. So you don't have to put in hours every single week, 30 seconds all out every day, if it's truly all out, moves you forward. And something similar is the Tabata workout. Tabata was a Japanese researcher. He wanted to find a more efficient way to get fit. So he took 2 groups of people, age matched, health matched, and one group, he says, you're going to run 1 hour 3 times a week. So 3 hours of training. The other group, I want you to train 4 minutes 3 times a week. And those 4 minutes are going to be 20 seconds all out with a 10-second recovery, 8 rounds. Well, at the end of 3 months, they evaluated the 2 groups. The group that did the Tabata protocol, the intense workout, 4 minutes 3 times a week, better body composition, better aerobic fitness, better anaerobic fitness. So it doesn't have to take a long time to get fit, but it does take consistency. When it comes to sleeping right, I love the quote that a great day starts the night before. So I'm a big fan of a good night's sleep. Anders Ericsson wrote the book Peak. He studied peak performers from, not only athletics and business and music and academics and other areas, but here's what he found out. The best of the best would actually sleep 8.6 hours a night. So back to our friend Ganoderma. People who consume Ganoderma fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, longer, wake up more refreshed. And we have some wonderful team members that the way they were introduced, they were told, look, this will help you sleep better. And they said, well, we don't believe you. They said, well, try it. And so they went home and they actually had a mocha at midnight and said, all right, let's see what happens. Well, they both slept like babies, woke up the next day feeling absolutely fabulous, and have been outstanding team members building a great organization since. So, you know what, sometimes we can help people in more ways than we could ever imagine. And that's the beautiful thing about the compounding. People love it, they share it, and this impact can grow all over the world. So poop right, in the UK, they call it poo right. We tend to get some chuckles with that, but this is about detoxifying. And I'm going to share some interesting facts. If we go back over a little over 100 years, at 1900 in the US, the average life expectancy was 47.3 years. Fast forward 109 years, and lifespan had increased to 78.2. So that's pretty phenomenal. And we might ask, well, how and why did that happen? Well, the answer is that it was actually improved sanitation and hygiene. So if we look back to 1900, the top mode of transportation was horse and buggy. And guess what? Horses eat, drink, and go to the bathroom. And I'll show you a picture of New York City in a moment. But as they transitioned to automobiles, horses stopped pooping all over the place. We cleaned up our external environment. And what I tell people is that there was a 75% reduction in death rate from infectious disease before antibiotics, a 91.25% reduction in death rate from infectious disease before vaccines, and none since. And by the way, these are indisputable facts. So as people started getting healthier and cleaner and less toxic, things were better. New York City, 1881, estimated 2.5 million pounds of horse manure per day. And the question I ask for my patients, my students, is, look, if cleaning up the external environment led to such dramatic increases in longevity, what will happen when we clean up the internal environment? And the symptoms of chronic poisoning include fatigue, sleep disturbance, intestinal distress, allergy symptoms, headaches, confusion, and anxiety. You know, and I tell people, if we got rid of these symptoms, I might have to do something else for a living. But the great news is, cleaning up the body helps with all of these, and Ganoderma is really, really good for detox. And I'm going to focus on this case here. This was called the case of the frozen addicts. These were drug abusers in Southern California in the early 1980s. They injected a synthetic heroin called MPTP, and they all woke up the next day with Parkinson's. Well, when they went to the hospital, the doctor said, well, we want some of that. And they said, what, are you crazy? Why would you want some of that? Look what it did to us. And they said, you know what, maybe someday we can find a cure for Parkinson's. Well, it took them until 2018, so it might have been 30-something years later, to finally try Ganoderma with MPTP. But when they injected animals with MPTP and gave them Ganoderma, they did not get Parkinson's. So it prevented the death of the brain cells. It prevented the death of liver cells with carbon tetrachloride. It prevented death of pancreatic cells with an extreme toxin to the pancreas, and highly prevented neural tube defects. And one of the beautiful things is it's safe and effective in pregnancy. When it comes to talk right, every good relationship requires good communication. And I tell people every cell in our body is in communication with itself and with other cells and with literally the whole body. So most people have heard of something called endocrine communication. That's hormones. That's a broadcast message. But there's also autocrine. That's actually cells talking to themselves. And then there's paracrine. That's cells talking to its neighbors. And why is communication important? Well, it's estimated that the very first event in cancer is a loss of cell-to-cell communication. So these guys, by the way, are purposely getting in each other's face. Why? Because they're going to fight. They're not being friendly to one another. But when I would be teaching a seminar in person, I'd look out in the audience and, we might have several hundred people. And I'd say, while we're here, I noticed that no one's sitting on anybody else's lap. Why not? Because we respect each other's space. By the way, when it comes time for lunch, I notice that people respect their own plate. They eat their own food. They don't bother their neighbor. Why? Because we respect each other's food. And by the way, if we need to use the restroom, we excuse ourselves. We go someplace else. We get away from the crowd. We use the restroom. We get cleaned up and we come back. Well, cancer cells don't do any of those. They don't respect your space. They crowd your space. They try to crush you to death. They steal their food and they poop and pee all over you. So they're really bad neighbors. And we don't want that to happen. So Ganoderma, great for communication. And one of the things that disrupts communication in the body is acid. And acid is the top toxin that's made in human bodies in response to energy production. This was a book written, decades ago that was very profound and very accurate. It was entitled Alkalize or Die. Well, that's one way of looking at it. I tend to look at the positive. So, I like to say alkalize and thrive. When we start looking at athletes, one of their top needs is actually acid alkaline control, and particularly acid buffers. So this is a graph of speed of an Olympic sprinter. And I tell people we have 4 different energy systems. And by the way, this might be too technical for some and just right for others, but we have stored ATP, which is super fast energy, the first 3 seconds. So if a lion jumped out, 3 seconds, boom, instant energy ATP. Then very fast energy is something called creatine phosphate. That's another 3 seconds. Then we switch to what's known as anaerobic glycolysis. When we do that, we make lactic acid, and that actually slows us down. And this gentleman, Tyson Gay, I treated him, and then, you can YouTube Tyson Gay beats Usain Bolt, and how fun that I have a video testimonial of Tyson. But part of what we did was alkalize him, and we did it with Ganoderma and other things and got him faster, and that improved his speed after 60 meters, and that allowed him to beat Usain Bolt. Lots of medically proven benefits of an alkaline diet. And we'll show in a moment that Ganoderma is considered the most alkaline food on the planet, but it's good for bone density, muscle mass. It protects against chronic illness, reduces cancer invasion and metastasis, very important, and even improves toxin excretion. So that's something that I believe everybody could benefit from striving for. If we transition to coffee for a moment, coffee has more than 30 different acids, but yet we have a patented process by which we dramatically reduce the acid in the coffee. And then we infuse Ganoderma, which is considered the most alkaline food on the planet. And so by consuming Ganoderma, we actually help people to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right, prevent chronic illness with absolutely no downside. And there's pure genius in putting it in coffee and tea, because people that drink coffee or tea never need to be reminded, never plan to quit. If you're one of the few that doesn't like that, we have capsules, or maybe you prefer the CXT or the shake. Those are beyond awesome. But that will wrap up the slides that I have. And now I'd like to see if anybody has any questions about anything. And Zaf, my wonderful co-host, I'm wondering if there was anything in the chat that you might have noticed. Or I can open up the chat myself.
Hey, Dr. Bob, how are you doing?
I am epic. How are you on this beautiful day?
I'm great. We're recovering well from the storm, but everything is back on track, and life is beautiful.
How wonderful. Good, good, good.
All right, Dr. Bob, we have a question here as well from Rose. There's something trending in South Africa, right? It's an IV drip bar. It has glutathione in it, and people insert it into them via, I think it's a needle, and it's a new trend, right? So I do believe glutathione is created by the liver. And could you touch on that? I mean, is that something good to get added into your body that way? Or can Ganoderma also help on a much better level?
Well, glutathione is considered the body's most powerful antioxidant, and it's an intracellular antioxidant. And, there's some good research on glutathione, and it's pretty fascinating. If people wanted to look at an interesting study, they could go to YouTube, type in glutathione infusions in Parkinson's disease. And what I might do, I guess people can see me, but you see someone with Parkinson's where they're shaking, and then they get a glutathione infusion, and within minutes, the shaking goes from like this to like this to like this to pretty normal in many, many cases. So there's a proven health benefit to detoxify the brain, to revitalize things. You can get too much of a good thing, and if you were to do that, you could decrease your body's ability to make glutathione. But I don't think people are living on glutathione infusions. I think they're taking it for a quick pick-me-up, and it's been around long enough that I'm not aware of a downside to it. But when we start talking about Ganoderma, one of my favorite stories is I was giving an Organo Ganoderma talk, and there was an individual in the audience that had very severe Parkinson's. He loved his coffee, but he had to drink his coffee out of a straw, because if he tried to pick up his cup, he would spill all over himself. Well, within a month of consuming Ganoderma coffee through the straw, his tremors were reduced so much that he could actually drink his coffee with his hand. And that part is very, very powerful. And so a little bit of glutathione infused now and then probably has a health benefit. You wouldn't want to do too much too often. Ganoderma is a powerful antioxidant, powerful detoxification agent. It's different than glutathione, works by similar mechanisms and more. but I really don't see any challenge with an intermittent glutathione infusion. I was looking above at a question or comment, and the comment was, illness is a result of what you put in and the amount of stress your body undergoes when it doesn't receive the necessary nutrients. You know, it's absolutely true. You know, a couple thousand years ago, we could say, let your food be your medicine. And that was good wisdom. And to some degree, we want that to happen. But when you look at how we've depleted the soil, there was a journal article, Advances in Therapy, that came to the conclusion that food just doesn't have enough in it to, you know, help people that are sick and in need of more nutrition, and therefore supplementation is advisable. And so now Ganoderma could be one-stop shop. It's got all the fabulous 50, all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, and water in doses that make a difference to human health, but also 79 molecules, 430 unique molecules, 79 of which are antimicrobial. So that part is good. I'm looking.
We have another question here from Jennifer DeLanga. She asked, can Ganoderma make a difference in bipolar or borderline personality disorders?
Well, whenever you ask can, you know, we'd have to say it's possible. And then when we start looking at brain benefits, there are many, many studies on Ganoderma and brain benefits. Then if we go to Daniel Amen's book, The End of Mental Illness, what did he say? Brain health and mental health are one and the same. So Ganoderma makes a healthier brain. Could it make for healthier mental health? It could. So all of that is possible. I like very complete protocols. You know, again, the brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, toxin vulnerable. There are plenty of people that are very, very low in omega-3s. That doesn't give them a good, the right structure to make an ideal brain. A lot of people don't have ideal hydration. The brain is most sensitive to hydration. It's very vulnerable to toxicity and stress. We'd want a complete protocol. And, you know, some people need medication, but the guidelines on medication are very simple: lowest dose, shortest duration. And so anytime that we can help people in a way where they need less medication or maybe no medication, that's a great thing. So it could potentially help. But remember, we can't make any health claims. That's part of the world we live in. Even if we had a published medical study that said Ganoderma was phenomenal for this, we couldn't say, you know, hey, our Ganoderma will help. We just can't. It's just the world we live in. So.
Thank you, Dr. Ball, for that clarity. It's really fascinating. You know, all the things we need in life to help us get through our challenges is right here on Earth. And a lot of people go very far to make those things, but, you know, it's literally right here. We have another question from this person. Her name is Yolandi. She says she has a client suffering from MS. Her one leg has gone numb and her arms feel heavy. She has started on the black coffee. I have suggested this 4 capsules. Please advise, what would you suggest and the dosage?
So I'm going to put a couple of things in the chat. So I have a YouTube video on autoimmunity, and that's actually the etiology, the cause of multiple sclerosis. And, you know, I'll ask people, are you familiar with autoimmunity? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, well, what's going on? They say, well, I don't know, for some reason or other, my immune system hates my brain and is killing my myelin. And, you know, I might ask the question, why in the world would your brain, you know, why would your immune system hate your brain and want to kill your myelin? And the emerging data is pretty simple. And that is, I'm not finding what I'm looking for. I'll keep looking. That something is wrong with the cell, and the body recognizes that it's not healthy, and it starts essentially, you know, killing bad cells. Now, if you get too many cells dead, you can start to have symptoms. But another thing I tell people is that you could have multiple sclerosis and you have these white matter lesions in the brain, but the white matter lesions are always there, but the symptoms are not always there. And so it's not the lesions that are causing the symptoms. So I'm going to put an autoimmune YouTube video in the chat. And then I'm also going to put in an MS testimonial in the chat. And, you know, I wonder if maybe I should even play that. Let's see. So I'm going to put the link here, share, copy. Back to the beginning. I'm going to put this in the chat. And I'm going to share screen. I'm going to play a MS testimonial just to say this is an experience that someone had. And, you know, we're not going to say that anybody would have the same experience, but let's just share.
My name is Linda Atwell. I'm 52 years old. I came to see Dr. Bob about 6 years ago. Gosh, it seems like it's been forever. When I came to see him, I had two 24-hour IV lines in my chest with TPN and 24-hour anti-nausea medication. I hadn't eaten in 3 years. Bob encouraged me to start detoxification, including juicing, and I thought it was silly because I would projectile vomit even water back up. He encouraged me to clean my colon out first, so I did that. And when I started eating again, I had violent reactions to some foods. Found that I was severely allergic to gluten and dairy. I leave them out of my diet, and actually now I feel better than I did in junior high school. I had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and multiple sclerosis all at the same time. And I think even Bob thought I was pretty much of a challenge when I came in. But thanks to him, I have my life back. It's wonderful to share what I've learned with others, and most especially with my family. My son, who was diagnosed with cancer when he was 8 years old, battled cancer all the way through high school. And then they told him that he probably had what his mom had. He does. He's allergic to dairy and gluten too, and I know he'll never have to go through what I went through. And my niece Megan has seen Dr. Bob. God made this world perfect in the beginning, and to learn that the more simply and naturally you live your life, the healthier it will be has been a blessing to me, and I hope it will be to you too.
Without getting too revealing, can you share your wonderful tattoo that covers your scars, or do you not want to do that?
Oh, I'd love to share my tattoo. For my 50th birthday, I decided to take something that had been very painful in my life and make something new from it. I had two horrible scars on my chest from IV lines. And on this side, this is a Colorado state flower where I was born. It does have a vine that goes all the way around. Even my life with my husband has been renewed, rejuvenated.
I think we can see a scar kind of on the other side.
Yeah, this is the light one. The light one.
And then is that one on the neckline as well?
Yeah, muscle biopsy.
Okay, so you've been through a lot.
I have. I used to wear a pump around my waist that I wore everywhere I went. People thought it was a video camera. I'd tie big bows on it and try and camouflage it. Was bald for 5 years, was on chemotherapy, which they treated autoimmune disease with chemotherapy. Changing my diet is much, much easier than the life I had before, and much more rewarding.
Do I have your permission to share your great story with others?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and I have that one in there as well, but, you know, I'm of the mindset that, you know, if you have a pulse, you have a prayer, and if we give you the right things, miracles can happen. And Linda was a beautiful miracle. So, other questions?
Hey, Dr. Bob, thank you always for sharing. You know, it's a testimonial that you share on your YouTube page that always comes in handy to help someone else out in life, you know. And if you have any of you guys on YouTube, you can just subscribe to Dr. Bob, and he puts a lot of health tips on there that could basically help you or help someone else out in life. We got a message, a comment here from Adri. She says, advice for someone diagnosed with breast cancer And also, Dr. Bob, could you also touch a little bit on
Zap, you cut out. Could I talk about what? Is it my connection or
Cancer.
yours? I'm sorry,
I'm
Zap,
not sure, can you hear me?
repeat again, please.
Advice for someone diagnosed with breast cancer?
No, I'm going to put something in the chat again in terms of a link. In fact, I'll put 3 links. 3 times I've lectured at the International Nutrition and Cancer Conference, and cancer patients really need nutrition support, and a standard trained oncologist really has almost no training in nutrition, and some of the recommendations take them in the wrong way. But you know what? I'm going to share another video. So I'm going to go to this one, which was fun. This was, I think it was 4 years ago,
Hey,
but fun.
happy, beautiful day. Dr. Bob Rakowski here. September 13th, 2018 with superstar Anna Marie Omongo. And I'm going to step back, turn the camera around as soon as I figure out how to do that. Come on, turn it around. Or mine's just going to go like this because I can't. All right. So we've been friends a long time.
Many years.
And we've been through some interesting things, but what have we experienced together most recently?
So most recently, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in March of 2017. And so I came to Dr. Bob immediately, very fearful. So I went through cancer treatment, cancer surgery, more treatment following because it had been misdiagnosed. But in the meantime, just came to Dr. Bob for nutrition and encouragement and strength. And now they're told me I'm cancer-free. No cancer. I'm going back to work for the first time since I had my children. Very excited. And I'm feeling better than I have felt in many, many years. Like,
So even before cancer.
long before cancer, yes.
Yeah. And you don't mind standing up. Let's just show. I mean, we've got older pictures of Anna Marie.
Don't show those.
Well, look how beautiful you are, right? So
Yeah,
you
I
actually
feel beautiful.
beat
Yeah.
this major process. And I like what your family said. They said, remind us, why are we praying for you?
Yeah.
So what do they mean by that?
Well, I'm the one with all the energy in the family now. I'm the one that, they're all sitting around and I'm, on the move, and they're like, and I said, well, nutrition, right? It's how you take care of your body. So that's what I'm looking forward to going forward, because we don't want to see cancer again.
No, so we're gonna share some of the stuff in the fall, but we used nutrients that were actually known to enhance the killing effect of chemotherapy, to
Ganoderma.
protect the body, to
Ganoderma.
prevent chemo resistance. And how did that
Ganoderma.
go?
Well, I had cancer in several lymph nodes, several lymph nodes. So they were shocked when they did the surgery and didn't find any cancer, 0 evidence of cancer in the lymph nodes. So I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, it went really well. All right, do I have your permission to share this
Absolutely.
information?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any conditions on that?
No.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We're gonna make our world better.
So I am going to put in the chat a bunch of different references on nutrition and cancer. And those are there, but we did a lot of Ganoderma with Anna Marie and a lot of other things, ketogenic diet. So those 3 references may be helpful to help you make better choices. Anything else?
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Yes, there's a few more here. I'm not sure how are you for time, but one here from Amy. What will be suggested for people with epilepsy?
Well, certainly spores, but guess what? I have another YouTube link that I'll send to where I put together a very, very comprehensive protocol where we had an individual with severe seizures where they couldn't handle the medications anymore. The medication was poisoning the body, causing liver enzymes elevation. And we were able to get the seizures completely under control with natural remedies. And so I've got a video that has the seizure protocol, and I will also put that in there. So, but certainly spores. So other questions?
Well, we have a comment here from Charlene Strasberg. She put it very wonderfully. She said everything we need is provided for us in nature, and to undo the damage that man-made products and foods have done. 1 second, that chat just skipped on. I'm not sure if you can see that. It just skipped away.
I actually see it.
All right, go for it, Dr. Bob.
So the comment is here, everything we need is provided for us in nature. That's absolutely true. To undo the damage that man-made products and food have done to our bodies will differ from person to person, and how the extent of improvement one will see by consuming Ganoderma, for instance. Absolutely true. You know, we are all profoundly unique. You know, we see some people that, you know, just switching their coffee is just the nudge they need to help them feel so much better. And sometimes they can even have some pretty extreme circumstances that they've struggled with for a long period of time. And there's others, you know, and one of my mentors talked about, you know, when you're solving problems for individuals, you might think that you could consider having a, you know, a bucket that has 5 holes in it. And if you don't plug all 5 holes, well, they keep leaking water and they just don't get better until you address all 5 issues. But, you know, if that's the case, well, Ganoderma might address some of them, but not all of them. And you have to keep looking till you find. But Ganoderma, you know, universally good, but it's not going to solve every problem for every person every time. That's a given fact.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. We have another question here from Busiswa. Would you like to unmute and introduce yourself? She is part of our corporate team in South Africa, and you can ask the question as well.
Thank you, Zeb.
No problem.
Good evening, Dr. Bob.
Happy beautiful evening.
Yes, my name is Busi, so I'm the Business Development Manager Africa. Actually, yes, I have a question, but I also have a message from Cornell. She has asked me to send her apology. She's in another meeting. We are so happy that you connected with us tonight so that we can learn from your experience. It's a very informative session. My question was, can Ganoderma help someone who wants to fall pregnant? How are the chances if someone wants to fall pregnant and she can't fall pregnant naturally? Can it improve chances of fertility?
Yep. So I'm going to share my screen again, share screen. And if we watched Unite this weekend, some people may not have known the backstory, but Marta, a diamond out of Hungary, was told that she could never have children. And this was actually at an Organo event in Las Vegas where she's marrying Balaz and pregnant. And then Maxime was born however many months after that. And then she has another baby as well. And she says, you know, these are Ganoderma miracle babies. And so we had a Zoom last night. And in fact, we have a wonderful young lady in Canada. Her name is Alana, and she had shared coffee with a friend of hers. And, you know, her friend just gave up. She gave up on the idea of ever having children. And because she and her husband have been trying for 4 years with no success. And guess what? A month after drinking Ganoderma coffee, she's pregnant. And that's the only change. So we have a bunch of those testimonials. And so, yeah, it can. Now, if someone's having challenges, we might want to look at every aspect of life and see what we can do to help them get better. But Ganoderma is a great start.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Bob.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dr. Bob, we have another question here. I believe it's the last one from Nicole Conrady. She said she got a question from one of her girls with MS, TN. What regime would you suggest? They want to put her on a drip for her heart tomorrow.
Well, I don't know enough about the case to really say. I don't know that I've ever had an MS patient that was told they needed some type of drip for their heart. You know, it affects the central nervous system. And I don't know what TN is. So I might have to try to figure out what that abbreviation is. Question from my girls with MS, TN. Oh, maybe that's some distinction I'm not familiar with. Let me type it in. Let's see if it gives me a little idea of what they're asking. MS, TN. Well, TN, all right, Trigeminal Neuralgia, maybe that's what they're talking about, which is a painful condition of the face affecting a facial nerve. Maybe that's what they're talking about. Ganoderma spores, you know, I have no idea why they're wanting to do a heart drip, but one thing that I'm always encouraging is, when you start looking at what medicine does for autoimmunity, there's a TED talk that says these words: medicine's been dead wrong on their management of autoimmunity for 50 plus years. Suppressing the immune system is not the answer. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes you might not want to do that for a short period of time. There's times where that might be valid if someone's really in a downward spiral. But ultimately, the guideline for medication is the lowest dose and shortest duration. I would certainly start with spores and other things. Look at the video that I had on autoimmunity, and you'll look at the 6 major immune modulating strategies. But that's about the extent that I can answer that question without more information.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Well, Heidi has one. We know the answer for this, but for those that don't, could you just touch on this, right? Because it is kind of a big thing in South Africa, blood thinners. And she says, is it a total no-no for any blood thinners? It is always a question we always refer to doctor, but this is a daily question we get. I know Ganoderma is a natural anticoagulant, so I always want clients, but so is most herbs, anticoagulants as well. So could you explain how Ganoderma does not thin the blood, but promotes even sustainable flow?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, I get that question often enough that I made a YouTube video, and I'll put that in the chat as well. And certainly, one team, one dream, everybody's welcome to use that and educate people with. But when people ask, can I take Ganoderma with blood thinners? I always say, I don't know, but your body knows. And so there's a test, and it's called prothrombin time with international normalized ratio. And the abbreviation we use here in the States is PT/INR. And when people are on blood thinners, those have so many side effects and sometimes life-threatening side effects. They're very dangerous and very risky, and people should monitor their clotting parameters. Now, in my 10 years with using Organo, I've had many patients where we've got a baseline on their clotting level and then gave Ganoderma, and there's not a single one that I'm aware of that had any challenge, any interaction with Ganoderma and the blood thinners that were negative. And what I can tell you is we found a number of people that their blood was already too thin and they were at a very high bleeding risk. But when we talk about blood thinners from a medical standpoint, what they do is they prevent normal clotting and they promote abnormal bleeding. That's what medical blood thinners do. What does Ganoderma do? It prevents abnormal clotting and does not promote abnormal bleeding. And that's well documented in the literature. So ultimately, people should, one, figure out what is the problem that they would need a blood thinner. And sometimes people have an arrhythmia, something like atrial fibrillation, they can be prone to a clot. And if that's the case, we'd want to fix the atrial fibrillation. And by the way, Ganoderma can be really good for that as well. But the first question that I always like to answer with any interaction with any patient is what's causing the problem? And then ultimately, we want to get after cause and effect.
Thank you, Dr. Bob.
You're welcome.
We seem to be having some questions coming in. Are you good for time?
I have a few more minutes.
All right, great. We got another question from Amy. I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis at 6 months. I'm now 45, got RA. I think that's rheumatoid arthritis, since 6 years. But after 44 years, never could not use cortisone. Now where I was on 10 milligrams every day, now I'm on 5 milligrams once a week. So yeah.
So both of those conditions are known as autoimmune. So sarcoidosis is autoimmunity, rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmunity. Rheumatoid is much more common in females, which, by the way, as autoimmunity is across the board, and it's associated with an infectious organism called Proteus. And so killing off stealth infection can help with that. If you were asking, can Ganoderma help? It can. We've got some phenomenal testimonials. If you go back to the video that I showed with Linda, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, lupus, simultaneously put all those in remission. Now, it was a comprehensive protocol that we used And so that's what I shared within that video. So, you know, could it help? It could. And I think that this person previously couldn't take cortisone, then could, you know, and now is requiring less of it. That's probably a really good thing. The next question, I guess, is on pancytopenia. So pancytopenia means that there's a low level of the blood elements, the red cells, the white cells, and the platelets. And all those things are made from stem cells in the bone marrow. And so, you know, I tell people the top enemy of the bone marrow is actually heavy metals. And I like to clear heavy metals. Now, this might be a little bit technical for people, but Ganoderma, there's a fairly recent PubMed study, it might be 2021. It shows that it actually increases a protein in the blood called metallothionein proteins by 800%. So it's very good to help the body clear heavy metals. And so in theory, it could be helpful for this pancytopenia. That's my answer there. Zap, are you there? Or
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Yes. You got a long comment here from Heidi. Is thanking you, and she says at the end of the summary, yes, we have to find out the cause and not just treat the symptoms. So that's a comment is for you, Dr. Bob. And the last one from Kaz: can Ganoderma help a skin condition like panniculitis caused by, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, P. wickemi?
I've got to look that one up. So, you know, there's a lot of people that aren't familiar with the term panniculus. And what a panniculus is a belly that is hanging over the hips and sometimes even down to the thigh. And they basically grade the panniculus, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, by how big this belly is hanging down. And what tends to happen when someone has a big belly is they can't clean as effectively between the layers of fat. And panniculitis is an infectious organism that happens there. And so is Ganoderma anti-infective? It absolutely is, but we've got to reduce the panniculus or even make it go away. We've got to lose that weight. And you know, a ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, eat real food, clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day, in a way that honors your physiology, your genetics, your body goals, mostly plants. And in that case, a ketogenic diet would be effective. So could it be helpful? It could, but you know, that person probably needs to get into a tub of water with Epsom salts and you know, open up, lift up the panniculus and clean very thoroughly in there. And maybe use some topicals in the meantime, maybe even something like BU, you know, a really good skin cream could be pretty helpful for that as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Heidi has a wonderful comment for you there as well. And if anyone has anything else to say, you can feel free to unmute and ask. I think Dr. Bob is almost up for time. Otherwise, if not, Dr. Bob can leave us with some wonderful words of wisdom, as you always do, and see us off.
Well, you know, I like to wrap up as I wrap up my mixers. Jim Rohn taught me these 4 questions, and you know, phenomenal networker. If you haven't studied Jim Rohn, you might want to. He's the guy that actually launched Tony Robbins. But you know, he would finish any meeting with these 4 questions. The first question is why? Why did you take the time to join us today? There's so many other things you could do. The second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not learn how powerful these treasures are? You know, I've been studying Ganoderma for over 30 years. I've been using it in clinical practice for over 30 years. It's universally good. I was excited about it before I met Organo, but beyond excited because now we can create leverage. We can give people beverages that they consume multiple times a day. I made myself a beautiful CXT, you know, while I was playing that video, and I think it's Organo's best product. If you haven't tried that, you're going to want to try it. But why not learn about it? Next question, why not you? Someone's going to say, you know what, this makes sense. I'm going to share those videos. I'm going to share the links. I'm going to start impacting the world positively with these phenomenal products. And the final question is, why not now? The longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are to act on it. Organo has an absolutely phenomenal gold pack available now. So take advantage of that. You know, when we have these wonderful events, it's actually meant to make it easier for us to share treasures. And we have so many to share. And here's one thing I'll tell you, I'm part of a mastermind with Eric Worre, and it gives me such a deep appreciation for our global leadership. There's a lot of companies that are struggling over these times, supply chain, logistics, everything else. Organo is a pinnacle company with phenomenal leadership. And we barely even had a hiccup over these times where, companies have been put out of business. So we are very blessed to have what we have, and the world needs it. So let's move forward and share these treasures from the heart, because we can help so many people. So with that said, good night all, and God bless.